The Black Lady of Bryn Tor is a Victorian ghost story written in 1904 by Guy Boothby. The story concerns a married couple who move into a new house and find a strange woman in a black veil trespassing on their property. I have seen some curious sights and have taken part in some equally curious affairs in the course of my career, but I can safely assert that the story I am going to tell you now equals, if it does not excel, anything I have ever known.
I had just come from South America, where I had been ranching for a good number of years and, having been more successful than the majority of men who go in for that occupation, had returned to the old country with the intention of making it my home for the remainder of my existence. If you are prepared to spend the money, it would not seem difficult to find a house of the description you require. Yet only those who have tried it know what a serious business it can be. One will be too large and without sufficient land, another too small and with more land than you care to be bothered with. My whiff. And I visited innumerable places, and at last were beginning to despair of finding what we wanted. Then, quite by chance, I happened to hear of the property with which this story is connected. It was necessary for me to visit Plymouth in order to meet a friend who was returning from Australia. The beauty of Devon is proverbial, and never prettier than in the autumn. After my long absence abroad, it had a charm for me that I find it difficult to express in words. The dark red soil, the luxuriant hedgerows, the babbling brooks, and the vast solitude of Dartmoor appealed to me with overwhelming force. This was the county for me, if only I could find the place for which I had been so long and wearily searching. While I was awaiting the arrival of my friend's vessel, I made it my business to call on one of the leading house agents in order to make inquiries. Alas for my hopes, he had nothing on his books that I cared even to consider. I tried another, and yet a third, but with the same result. There were houses in plenty in the town, but they were useless. There were others in the immediate neighborhood, but each had some drawback. I bade the last agent good afternoon, and returned to my hotel very disappointed with my ill success. That evening my friend arrived and, in the pleasure of welcoming him, I forgot for the time being my quest of a residence. I was nearer success, however, than I imagined.
On descending to the coffee room next morning, I found a letter upon my plate. It was from the first agent upon whom I had called on the previous day. Quite by chance, he stated, he had happened to hear of an estate situated in a charming little village on the edge of the moor. The house was an old and picturesque one, and the property consisted of some 70 acres. Some considerable time, the owner being abroad and unable to keep it up. In conclusion, it was stated that the estate would be either let on lease or sold outright. I carefully studied the particulars enclosed, and, as I did so, began to feel that it really looked as if I had discovered what I wanted. When my friend descended, I told him the news, and invited him to remain a day longer in order to come out with me and inspect it. He consented to do so, and that afternoon we chartered a carriage and drove out.
There are reasons why I suppress the name of the village. They will, I expect, be obvious to you. Give a dog a bad name and hang him may apply as well to a property as to the canine race. The Hall, as the place was called, was on the further side of the village, and was on the very edge of the moor. The agent had described it exactly when he had declared it to be a picturesque old building. It stood on high ground, and immediately behind it rose the steep side of Bryn Tor, crowned with enormous boulders that gave it a strangely wild appearance.
T stood on high ground, and immediately behind it rose the steep side of Bryn Tor, crowned with enormous boulders that gave it a strangely wild appearance.
The house itself was approached by a lengthy carriage drive, and, as I learnt later, had been built in the days of George I. From the first moment that I saw it, I liked it. I presented the housekeeper with the order to view, whereupon she examined it as if it were a banknote for £1,000, and she was not quite certain as to whether it was genuine. At last, however, she condescended to admit us, and we entered the large, square hall. It was paved, and I must confess did not present a very inviting appearance. The oak paneling, however, was handsome, while the grand staircase was massive and finely carved. We entered the large, square hall. It was paved, and I must confess did not present a very inviting appearance. The oak paneling, however, was handsome, while the grand staircase was massive and finely carved. With no very good grace, the old woman threw open the door of the room, which I judged to be the dining room. Thence we proceeded on our tour of investigation. The house, with the exception of the kitchen and a bedroom, was quite unfurnished, and certainly stood in need of repair. It possessed, however, great possibilities, and I felt sure that when furnished and put in proper order, it would make a charming dwelling. By the time our inspection was finished, the afternoon was well advanced and, if we desired to get back to Plymouth in time for dinner, it behoved us to start at once. That evening I wrote a long description of what I had seen to my wife, inviting her to join me, in order that I might have her opinion. Next day she arrived. She proved to be as charmed with it as I was, and by the end of the week following matters were in excellent trim for my becoming its owner. As soon as the necessary legal formalities had been complied with, my wife set off for London on furniture-buying thoughts intent, while I remained behind to hurry on the work that had to be completed before we could come into residence. At last, it was the second week in November, if my memory serves me, the furniture began to arrive. A makeshift bedroom was prepared for me, and I exchanged the hotel in Plymouth for my own abode. For the next few days my life was not altogether a bed of roses. Everything had to be arranged, the servants were new, while the furnishers' men required strict supervision to prevent them spending the greater part of their time at the village inn. However, it was all done at last, and I felt that when my wife gave it the few finishing touches, which only a woman can do, it would be as nearly perfect as a man could wish to have his home. It was on the day that my wife arrived that the first curious circumstance occurred, which it is the purpose of this story to relate. We had finished dinner, and were in our drawing-room discussing affairs in general and wondering when the butler was going to bring in coffee. I told him we would have it immediately after dinner, said my wife, rang the bell, and almost immediately he appeared in answer to it. He looked round the room in surprise, as if he expected to find a third person present. "We will have coffee, Simpson," said my wife. "Always let us have it as soon after dinner as possible. You will excuse me, madam, but I thought you were engaged with a lady. I have seen no lady." He looked at her in bewilderment. "A lady came up the hall," he said, "just as you left the dining room, and I thought she came in here." I looked at the man sharply. Apparently he was sober. "You must have dreamt it," I continued. "No, sir, I am quite sure I did not. I saw her quite distinctly, and would know her again anywhere. She seemed in great trouble, so that is why I did not disturb you. I am very sorry, sir." He departed to bring in the coffee. When he returned, I asked him to describe the person in question more minutely. I gathered that she was tall, and had a beautiful face, but with a very sad expression. She was dressed entirely in black, and had what he called a black lace upon her head. The man was deeply in earnest, but I could make neither head nor tail of it. "Let us look round," I said. "I am quite sure that the hall door has not been opened since dinner, and if she is in the house, now we shall doubtless find her." Accompanied by my wife, we set off and visited all the rooms on the ground floor, not omitting the servants' hall. My wife questioned the maids, but one and all asserted that they had not been into the hall since dinner. We next tried all the rooms upstairs with the same result. Simpson's mysterious black lady, if she had existed, was certainly not in the house. I felt more than ever convinced that the man must have fallen asleep in his pantry and dreamt it. We were not done with her yet. A week or so afterwards, and when we were quite settled in, one of the maids who had been down to the village declared that on a path that led through the shrubbery to a side gate she had met a lady who seemed in great distress. According to the girl's story, she was wringing her hands. It was too dark for the maid to see her face. "You are quite sure of what you are saying?" I asked, when Simpson brought the girl into presence. "I am quite sure, sir," was her reply. "I held the gate open for her to pass through. Did she speak to you?" "Not a word, sir. She just went by me as if she did not see me." "Emmy, this is really one of the strangest things I ever heard," I said to my wife when we were alone together. "I wonder who the woman is, and by what right she trespasses on my grounds. If I meet her, I shall put the question to her." Christmas was now drawing near, and we had invited a large house party to spend the festive season with us. Among the number was a young fellow named Despero, who had just got his troop in a Lancer regiment. We had placed him in a room in the bachelor's wing, which was the oldest portion of the house. He and I were the two first to reach the drawing room before dinner. "I say, old man," he began, "how many people have you got in the house?" I told him. "Yes, but who is the other one? The lady with the sorrowful countenance, and a jolly pretty one at that." "There is no one else," I replied. "I have given you the names of all of them." "Well, that's funny, for I'll swear she was no housemaid, and I've seen your wife's maid." Are you sure you are not rotting me? Perfectly sure. Describe this mysterious individual to me.
Yes, but who is the other one? The lady with the sorrowful countenance, and a jolly pretty one at that? There is no one else, I replied. I have given you the names of all of them. Well, that's funny, for I'll swear she was no housemaid, and I've seen your wife's maid. Are you sure you are not rotting me? Perfectly sure. Describe this mysterious individual to me.
My wife was the next to be favored with a glimpse of her. It was Christmas Eve, and the ladies had been down to the church to decorate the edifice for the next day. It was almost dark when they started to return. Your wife remained behind the party for about 10 minutes to discuss certain matters with the vicar. It was snowing heavily when she left the church, and the country looked indescribably beautiful in the light of the full moon. Her version of the story is that she had just left the shrubbery and was passing along the path that ran at the foot of the terrace when she looked up and saw a woman, dressed in black, leaning with her hands upon it, looking down at her. Then the woman walked away from her, wringing her hands as if she were in great grief. 3 minutes could not have elapsed before I had been told and was out on the terrace in pursuit. I looked about, but there was no sign of her, and, stranger still, there was not a footmark other than my own upon the snow. The matter was getting beyond me. I could not make head or tail of it. Next day, after the morning service, I took the vicar aside and asked him if he could give me any clue to the mystery. I told him the matter was getting serious. The servants declared that it was a ghost and, in consequence, were threatening to leave me. Well, I will not deny, he said, that something of this sort of thing has been village gossip for a great many years, and more than one person has laid claim to having seen it. Personally, I have never done so. The story goes that it is the spirit of a Spanish woman who was once the mistress of the house. If you will come into the church again, I will show you a tablet to her memory. I followed him and discovered the inscription in question. It described her for reasons already stated. I will not give her name as being the wife of the owner of the house, and also set forth the fact that she had died in the year 1782. There's not much to be gained from that, I said. But the coincidence is, to say the least of it, singular. I then thanked him and rejoined my party.
That evening was devoted to the usual amusements associated with the season. I am afraid we are all very juvenile, and must have shocked the grave Simpson. We played à dame crambo, acted charades, and at last came to thought reading.
My turn. I went out of the room while an experiment was preparing. The hall was brilliantly lighted, and I give you my word that I had no thought of the mysterious lady at that moment. Suddenly, I looked up to see her passing along the corridor at the top of the great staircase in the direction of the bachelor's quarters. Seizing a hat and coat, I ran up the stairs just in time to see her turning the corner of the corridor. I set off in pursuit. She was evidently making her way to a little door that led by a flight of steps to the garden below. By the time I reached it, she had disappeared. But throwing open the door, I saw her passing swiftly along. By the time I reached it, she had disappeared. But throwing open the door, I saw her passing swiftly along the garden path towards the shrubbery. Donning my hat and drawing on my coat, I continued my chase. She passed out of the wicket gate and turned into the narrow lane that led towards the tor. It was the night of full moon, and was almost as light as day, without leaving. Arrow lane that led towards the tor. It was the night of full moon, and was almost as light as day. Without leaving any track upon the snow, she sped on at such a rate that I had great difficulty in keeping her in sight. At last she reached the foot of the tor and began the ascent. This was more than I had bargained for it must be remembered that my feet were in evening dress shoes and that snow was lying inches deep. Must be remembered that my feet were in evening dress shoes and that snow was lying inches deep upon the ground. However, having come so far, I was determined to see what the end of it all would be. Staggering, falling, I began to climb, the black figure speeding on ahead of me, never pausing for a moment. T last did reach the summit and stood, well perhaps I could have counted 20, upon the topmost boulder. It made a weird picture, I can assure you. Then she raised her arms above her head and fell through the air to the rocks nearly 200 feet below. On my honor, it was so real that I gave a great cry as I saw it. I scrambled down to see if there was any sign of her, but there was none. The tragedy ended with her death. I went home scarcely able to believe the evidence of my senses. Next day, I took Desborough up the tor with me and described the scene to him. I believe he thought I had dreamt it all, We stood at the foot and looked up at it. By Jove! It would be a ghastly place to take a leap from, he said. Is that a cave up there? He pointed halfway up the face of the cliff. There certainly was a cave there. Perhaps that is the clue to the mystery, I cried. A man could be lowered to it from the top. As soon as the snow goes, I'll have a look at it. A week later, I took several of my men and a strong rope and visited the tor once more. After having taken every precaution, they lowered me over the cliff till I reached the narrow entrance to the cave. I managed to squeeze myself in, and then lit a candle which I had brought with me. 3 steps took me into a fair-sized cavern and showed me as strange and terrible a sight as man has ever looked upon. Stretched out upon the floor was the skeleton of a man. Scattered round him were remains of books and what might once have been a blanket. I took up one of the books, and inside the cover found the name of the man whose wife's tablet I had seen in the village church on Christmas Day. Later on, I examined it carefully. Inside was written, "I am dying of starvation. They will not let my wight bring me food. I have destroyed the papers. Farewell, my beloved wife." Thus the mystery was solved. The poor remains were brought down from their long resting place and decently interred. Since then, the Black Lady, as the village.
In a quiet village surrounded by ancient forests, 3 friends, Gabriel, Krishna,
one of the boys
and Bendy, were
received a
known for their
parcel in the mail.
curiosity.
There
They
were no
weren't
stamps
warriors
on the
or
mysterious
mages
package,
or
and no
heroes.
name or
Not
address
yet.
was written on the front.
They were just ordinary
The boy
kids
had no
who
idea
loved
who it was
exploring
from.
old
When he
ruins
opened
and
the
telling
parcel,
scary
he
stories
found
by
a
lantern
DVD
light.
inside.
The sun was setting
There was no
when they
cover on the
spotted a
case,
strange
and
red
no
glow
title on
between
the
the
disc.
trees.
He
I
thought his
don't
friends
like
might be
this.
playing
It's
a
just a
joke
storm
on him,
coming.
so he took the DVD and went out to meet the other boys. When he arrived at their house, he asked them about the mysterious DVD, but they said they had nothing to do with it. They invited him inside to watch it and see what was on it. When they sat down on the sofa and pressed play on the DVD player, they were surprised at what they saw on the screen. There was a creepy clown standing in a room. There was a bed on his left and the closet on his right. He was holding 2 red balloons and staring into the camera. Then, some weird music started playing and the clown began dancing and jumping around. He was jerking and shaking his body all around the room. All the while, his clown face was fixed in a wide, menacing grin. He looked insane and his behavior was bizarre. 2 of the boys thought it was hilarious and started laughing out loud. After a while, they noticed that the 3rd boy was very quiet. When they turned to look at him, they could see that his face was white as a sheet and his eyes were wide in terror. "What's the matter with you?" they asked. "Why aren't you laughing?" The boy replied in a real voice, "That's my bedroom."
A few days ago, I had a really strange dream. I was standing on a long, narrow road that leads to my school. It was strangely quiet. No wind was blowing, no birds were singing, and no insects were chirping. The road was completely empty, and there was nobody else around. I began walking. Just then, I got the strangest feeling that someone was watching me. Looking back over my shoulder, I spotted a small figure in the distance. It seemed to be running at full speed. I kept walking, but every time I glanced behind me, the figure was closer. The whole thing made me very uneasy. It just kept gaining on me, drawing closer and closer. At one point, stopped in my tracks and looked back. The figure had stopped too. It was just standing there in the middle of the road, staring at me. When I started walking again, the figure began running after me. Eventually, the figure got close enough for me to make out his face. It was a clown. One of those sad clowns you see in paintings. He was dressed in a shabby hat and threadbare coat, like a hobo. The way he was staring at me really frightened me, and for a moment I thought, if he catches me, he will kill me. I wanted to run, but for some reason I couldn't. My legs felt heavy, and I could barely lift my feet. It was all I could do to just keep up the same pace. The clown kept getting closer and closer. The next time I glanced back, I could see the clown's eyes. He was crying. I saw my school in the distance, and a feeling of relief washed over me. Something told me that, if I could just get there before he caught me, I would be safe. Just as I reached the main gate of the school, I turned around one last time. The clown was right behind me. His hand gripped my shoulder and whirled me around. The most terrifying thing was his face. He wasn't angry at all. Instead, he had a desperate, haunted look. Tears were streaming down his painted cheeks. "Caught you," he said. Then, to my surprise, he just let go of me and walked away. I stood there dumbfounded. How could I have been so stupid? I had been scared for no reason. I began laughing at myself. The clown stopped in his tracks and turned around. He took a rusty knife from his pocket and held it up to his face. "The second time I catch you, I have to cut you," he said. "The third time, I have to kill you. See you next time." With that, the clown wiped the tears from his face and walked away. I woke up in a cold sweat.
Shannon could hear the footsteps behind her as she walked towards her home. The thought of being followed made her heart beat faster and faster. "I'm just being silly," she told herself. "Nobody is following me." To be safe, she began to walk faster, but the footsteps kept pace with her. She was afraid to look behind her, and she was glad she was almost home.
"Please let me get home safe and sound," she thought. Shannon saw the porch light was on, and she leaned against the door for a moment, relieved to be in the safety of her own home. She glanced out the window to see if anyone was there. The sidewalk was empty. After tossing her books on the sofa, she decided to grab a snack. Then, she switched on her laptop and went online. She logged on under her screen name LonelyGirl13. Checking her list of friends, she saw that Cutie Guy 14 was on. He was her online boyfriend. They had been dating for more than a month. Although they had never seen each other in person, they were planning to meet up during the school holidays. She decided to send him an instant message.
Lonely Girl 13. Hi, glad you are on. I thought someone was following me home today. It was really weird. Cute Guy 14. Lol, you watch too many horror movies. Why would someone be following you? I thought you told me you lived in a safe neighborhood. Lonely Girl 13. Of course I do. Lol, I guess it was just my imagination. I didn't see anybody when I looked out the window. Cute Guy 14. You're just being paranoid. Lonely Girl 13. I guess so. For a while there, I was worried I had a stalker. Cute Guy 14. That's not possible. Unless you gave your real name out online. You haven't done that, have you? Lonely Girl 13. Of course not. I'm not stupid, you know. Cute Guy 14. Cool. So how was school today?
Lonely Girl 13. We played softball and my team won. Cutie Guy 14. That's great. Who did you play? Lonely Girl 13. We played the Asheville Hornets. LOL. Their uniforms are so gross. They look like bees. LOL. Cutie Guy 14. LOL. What's your team called? Cutie Guy 14. LOL. What's your team called? Lonely Girl 13. The Canton Wildcats. We have tiger paws on our uniforms. They're really cool. Cutie Guy 14. Nice. Did you pitch? Lonely Girl 13. No, I play second base. Lucky number 7. Anyway, I got to go. Gotta finish my homework before my parents get home. Cutie Guy 14. What time do they get home? Lonely Girl 13. Usually around 8 point. Cutie Guy 14. Aw, do you really have to go?
Cute Guy 14. Aw, do you really have to go? Lonely Girl 13. Sorry, I don't want my folks to get mad and ground me or something. Bye. Cute Guy 14. Okay. Catch you tomorrow. Missing you already. Lonely Girl 13. I love you. Bye. Cute Guy 14. I love you too, baby. Talk to you later. Shannon signed out and shut down her laptop. With a sigh, she opened her bag and took out her school books. Meanwhile, Cute Guy 14 was still online. He searched for her profile, and when it came up, he took out a pen and began to write down what he had learned about Lonely Girl 13 so far. First name, Shannon. Birthday, January 3rd, 2000. Age, 13. Hobbies, softball, singing, skating and going to the mall. Where she lives, somewhere in North Carolina. Besides this information, he jotted down some more pieces of information. She probably lived in Canton. He also knew she was alone in the house every afternoon when she came home from school. Her parents got home from work at p.m. He knew she would be playing softball on Thursday afternoons for her school team was the Canton Wildcats. Her favorite number 7 was printed on her jersey. He knew she was in the 8th grade at the Canton Junior High School.
She had told him all of this in the previous conversations they had online. He had enough information to find her now.
When Shannon's parents came home from work, she didn't tell them about her fears that someone had been following her home from the ballpark that day. She didn't want them to make a scene and stop her from walking home on her own. Her parents were always overreacting, and she didn't want to give them an excuse. It made her wish she was not an only child. Maybe if she had an older brother or sister, her parents wouldn't be so overprotective.
By the next Thursday, Shannon was playing softball and had forgotten all about the footsteps following her. The game was in full swing when, all of a sudden, she got the strangest feeling that someone's staring at her. It was then that she glanced up from her second base position to see a man standing on the sideline. He was watching her closely.
The man was leaning against the fence, behind first base, and when she looked at him, their eyes met and he smiled. He didn't look at all scary, and she quickly dismissed the fear she had felt. After the game, the man was still there while she was talking to the coach. She noticed him smile at her once again as she walked past. He knew he had found her. Quietly, he walked a safe distance behind her. It was only a few blocks to Shannon's home, and once he saw where she lived, he quickly returned to the park to get his car. Now, all he had to was wait until the time was right to make his move. That evening, Shannon was in her bedroom, doing her homework, when she heard voices in the living room. "Shannon, get down here," her father called. He sounded upset and she couldn't imagine why. She walked downstairs and went into the living room. She was shocked to see the man who had been watching her at the ballpark. He was sitting on the sofa. "Sit down, Shannon," said her father. "This man has just told us a very interesting story about you." Shannon sat on a chair. How could he tell her parents anything about her? She thought. She had never seen him before today. "Do you know who I am, Shannon?" The man asked. "No," she answered nervously. "Well, I'm your online boyfriend," he replied. Shannon was stunned. "That's impossible," she cried. "You're not cute guy 14. You're more than twice my age." "It's true," said the man. "I'm also a police officer, but it can't be," she cried. "Cutie 14 is only 14 and he lives in Michigan." The man smiled. "I know I told you all that, but it wasn't true. You see, Shannon, I pretended to be the same age as you because I wanted to trick you. Some people do that so they can find kids and do terrible things to them, hurt them, kill them, and much worse. I did it because I want to protect kids like you from those online predators. I came here to find you and to teach you a lesson. Wanted you to see how dangerous it is to talk to people online. Every day while we were chatting, you let slip enough information about yourself to make it very easy for me to track you down. You gave me your first name, and you told me the school you go to. You even gave me the name of your softball team and the position you play. The number on your jersey just made finding you a breeze. Shannon was stunned. You mean you don't live in Michigan? He laughed. No, I live in Raleigh. It made you feel safe to think I was so far away, didn't it? She nodded. I had a friend whose daughter was like you, he said gravely. The only difference was that she wasn't so lucky. She had an online boyfriend too. The guy found her and murdered her while she was home alone. Kids are taught not to tell anyone when they are alone, yet they do it all the time online. The wrong people can trick you into giving out information. A little here and a little there. Before you know it, you've told them enough for them to find you. I hope you've learned a lesson from all of this. Tell your friends so they will be safe too, okay?